Today I'm in Birmingham visiting property entrepreneur Saj Hussain, who has built up a multi-million-pound property portfolio since starting in 2007. In this video, we're walking around his latest 6-bedroom HMO purchase and discussing what it takes to complete these kinds of projects. Obviously, you said you know this area.
Yes.
And obviously, therefore, you know probably that it's a good area for HMOs, for renting. Is there anything specific that you look for with HMOs? Like, what do you want to be close to?
So this is in North Birmingham, not one of the best parts of Birmingham. However, there's really strong rental demand. It's predominantly blue collar demand. Blue collar meaning what I call people that are working, probably not a desk job. It might be driver, it might be somebody working in a warehouse, might be somebody in retail, manual, semi-skilled kind of work. That's a typical tenant profile for this area. You're not going to get your super high earners, trainee doctors, those sort of tenants in these properties.
This one obviously had Article 4, I say obviously, but you've told me obviously it's had Article 4 planning, or it was kind of adopted because it was a HMO prior to that coming in Birmingham.
Yeah, so Birmingham has now been Article 4 for a couple of years. This property was converted to a HMO prior to that. So we didn't need any planning at that time. But now if you're creating a new HMOs, it does. So one of the advantages of us buying something like this is we don't have the issue about going through planning. And in this area, you'd struggle to get planning for another HMO because there's so many already here anyway. Yeah. So that's what appeals to us. The fact that it's already an existing HMO, don't need planning, we just improve it.
And if I said, Saj, go out and buy another HMO tomorrow, which obviously I know you do weekly anyway and that, but if you were to go and look for another one, do you tend to opt for the Article 4 areas, or do you tend to opt for non-Article 4 areas?
So Birmingham citywide now, the whole city is Article 4.
Yeah. Previously
it was a few little pockets around the university that was Article 4, but now the whole of Birmingham is Article 4, so we don't have a lot of choices anyway. And then there are some of the surrounding towns, like for example, you've got Sandwell nearby, which we've got quite a few properties there as well, which is, if you were driving through, you wouldn't realise you've left Birmingham now in a different town, because they're all kind of joined together, as it were. But they're non-Article 4. So there's some properties that people are buying on the peripheries of Birmingham, just outside Article 4. It's all about understanding, is there a demand for the product you want to create? Because I've experienced many times where people have bought a property, done an amazing job, then contacted me and say, oh, you manage HMOs in Birmingham, could you manage our property? And I said, send me the details, let's have a look. They send me the picture, that looks amazing, look at the address, and I think there's no way you're going to achieve that rent or get those tenants in that location because they don't know the area.
The one thing that sticks out to me as a question, and I feel like someone in the audience might think this, is if you go back to like the time prior to it being all Article 4, when it had those pockets, would you opt to play outside of the Article 4 areas when you were trying to grow your portfolio? Or would you look in the Article 4 areas?
I'll phrase that in a slightly different way, or I'll answer it in a slightly different way. So in Birmingham, when we did not have Article 4, we would still buy in the heavily HMO populated areas, like this part of North Birmingham, Edgbaston's another one. There's already lots and lots of HMOs there. But we would still go to those areas and create these. Firstly, because they have the properties that lend themselves to conversion. They're the right style and size of house in the first place. Yeah. Secondly, there's already lots of people looking for rooms in that area anyway. Yeah. It's a well-established market. It's like opening up a shop. Are you going to go and open it in a very busy location where there's already lots of footfall, or are you going to go somewhere quiet and try and attract people there?
I like that analogy.
And so that's what we would do. We'd go to those places. But now that we're in Article 4, we can't go and create new ones in those areas, because that's the whole reason Birmingham introduced Article 4, is to prevent new HMOs in those areas. Right. But we can go to some of the more quieter parts of the city, I say quieter parts where there's less HMOs, and we can get it through planning and get an approval relatively easily, because it's just another tick box exercise of jumping through the hoops, another layer of complexity. That's all it is. And run them there where there's less competition. But we're then targeting, our marketing is different. We're trying to reach a different audience to fill those rooms. So if we did that in, say, one of the locations, which I won't reveal where it is, if one of those locations, we've got 2 or 3 houses there that run really well. If we had 15 there, we just damage the market because there isn't demand.
Yes, of course, oversaturated.
Nowadays the pain follow me, deal with trauma privately. I don't want to be a burden, I handle things defiantly. Spent a decade searching for a higher power guiding me.
What is it that attracted you to this specific property?
Quite a few things. One is it's in a location we know very well. The property is quite tired and needs refreshing. It's an existing HMO, and most of all, it's a great price. So we know how to make some profit on it.
Fab. So, I mean,
Yeah.
price often leads
Yeah.
stuff, right? So it's an area, is obviously one thing that I will go into shortly. But I guess the fact that it's already an existing HMO is interesting.
Yes.
And I also saw this is one you're planning to do up to sell rather
Yes.
than do up and keep.
Yes, because that's a newish thing for us. Normally we don't sell these, we do big renovations and tend to keep them for the long term. So they're almost like brand new houses when they're finished. But actually right now in the market, because the market's softening, there's more deals around, there's people that want to buy these. So what we're doing is buying a few of these where we're making them into nice properties, not outstanding, nice, run really well, and then flip them on for a profit.
Good. So I guess, obviously when you're renovating, then you have to watch your costs, not go too extreme with it. So that
definitely with this one's on a much tighter budget.
Well, I'll ask you about that as well shortly. But right now we're standing in one of the bedrooms. Obviously you're renovating it, you're doing a really nice job of it. What in particular did you look to do differently to what the previous owner was doing? Was there something he'd done wrong?
The previous owner had purchased this property, converted it to a 6-bedroom, 6 ensuite HMO. The build, unfortunately, wasn't the best. They've done a very shoddy job. There's lots and lots of things that are just not right. The heating system was done badly. The electrics were just appalling. And just general kind of repairs. It was just in a real poor state. But when you walked around it initially, everything looks fine. As soon as you touch things start falling apart, that's when you realise. And I knew, I had some history of this property. I knew it wasn't in the best condition. And I knew we were going to have to do some work on it, even though when we walked around, he said, it looks fine, just give me a lick of paint, it'll be fine. I said, it needs more than a lick of paint. So it was a case of we need to strip back, fix all those problems, and just make it more nicer and visually more pleasing as well for this market.
So this is like a living space?
Yeah, living space. You'll have a little sofa and TV in here. So not a huge amount of space, but a little bit of living space. If you're starting out with HMOs, and often people start with the 4-person HMO. It's nice and easy. You don't have to do too much. You get it up and running. You've got 3-bedroom house, use one of the living rooms. You've got 4 people there. In my mind, that doesn't really work from a financial point of view. Reason being, because generally the first 2 rooms will cover either your rent payment, if it's a rent to rent, or your mortgage payment, generally speaking. Yeah. The third one will probably cover your running costs, approximately. So 3 of the 4 tenants are just covering your costs. The 4th one is your profit. But then you can have voids, you can have probably some maintenance as well. You might have a bad payer, and then all of a sudden you're not making money. And you're still doing the same work, but you're making very little money. And let's say you had 2 more rooms on that same property. Well, room 5 and 6 are pure profit. They just go straight down to the bottom line because all your costs are now already covered by the first 3.
And if you've got one that's empty for a month,
it doesn't make a massive difference.
Some profit coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And that's why. And then 6 is also in a lot of areas, if they're not Article 4, it's permitted development, meaning you don't need planning. You just take a family house and you just convert it to 6 people because it's people, not rooms. Because you could have 15 rooms as long as you only got 6 people there. So that I find works really well. And then these style of houses, the big 3-story Victorian, Edwardian style houses, often they're big enough, they're spacious enough for it to work. You've got a room in the attic, you've got 3 bedrooms, and then you've got a couple of reception rooms. In this case, we've got this additional reception room here, plus the kitchen. So that means actually we can very comfortably create 6 rooms in a house like this. So they just lend themselves to this kind of layout.
And you just need the license then if you've done that conversion?
Yeah, so it does vary from borough to borough in terms of the requirement, but generally speaking, what you'll have is on a 4-person house, you don't need a license. On 5-person or more, 5 or 6, you need a license. And then if you've got 7 people, they need license plus planning permission. That's in a non-Article 4 area. But if it was an Article 4 area like Birmingham is, then as soon as you've got more than 2 people, i.e. the 3rd person moves in, then that becomes a HMO, and then that needs planning.
Because I've always wondered that, can you literally go to an area that's not Article 4, take a terraced house, take it from 3 beds to 6 beds, and then what do you need to do? Like, can you literally do that with the confidence that you're going to be able to run it as a HMO? Absolutely,
yeah, 100%. You just need to check that it's not an Article 4 area. Essentially what Article 4 means, they've removed your right.
Yeah.
They've removed your right to change a family house, which is under planning is at C3, into a HMO, which is called a C4. They've removed that right. So now you just need to go through planning and request planning. And often council will introduce Article 4 because they want to control the number of these that exist.
So into the kitchen.
Yes.
Alex, don't fall into the bucket of water. So obviously this is like early stages of well, I say early stages, you've obviously ripped it out and then plasterboarded, haven't you?
Yeah, what we did, we were going to do a little bit of work with the boiler and stuff. We had the ceiling down and stuff as well. But actually, as we were doing some work, we just found that it's not even, oh, we should do that. Things were just falling off. So the cupboards were literally just hung on with a couple of clips and stuff, and things just started falling off. So, you know what, let's just take the whole thing out and try and sort it out and do it properly. And that's what we've done. So we've just ripped all the units out. Once I ripped them out, we've taken them out. The units were decent enough. They should all go back in. If we need to replace them, we'll replace some. Boiler we've replaced because the heating system really wasn't adequate for what we had here before.
What kitchen supplier do you normally, who's your go-to?
So we tend to use a Magnet most of the time, but we use a LMPG to get a great discount. That's generally what we tend to use. I think they do overall a very good job in terms of price versus what you get quality-wise. Now, some people like the Howden ones. I tend not to get too hung up on the exactly what's where. I'm more interested in the volume. Let's get it done. Let's get on to the next one.
Yeah. No, I get that.
We'll make some money. Good. Let's move to the next one.
And what do you provide? Like, is it fridge, freezer,
so you'll have
dishwasher?
So in this case, I think two. I think we've got 2 fridge freezers. So sometimes we'll just have 1 fridge and 1 freezer. And we try and ensure there's at least 1 shelf for each person in the property. In a 6-person, often some local authorities ask you to have 2 sinks.
Okay.
But if you have a dishwasher, you don't need 2 sinks, and sometimes ask for 2 cookers. But if you've got a microwave oven and a cooker, then you don't need 2 cookers. Great. So it feels more like a house, a home, rather than a kitchen with 2 sinks and 2 cookers and stuff, which you can feel a bit more.
And do you do like a washer dryer in the same room?
Yeah, we put washer dryers in.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what we've got here, but I think it was or it's disappeared. But we'll definitely put washer dryers in. I know many landlords don't like the idea of dryers in the house, and that's because the cost of running them. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, your tenant's got to dry the clothes somewhere.
Yeah.
So if you don't provide them a dryer, then they're just going to put their clothes on the radiator. Then you've got moisture in the property, and you're going to increase the chances of damp problems and mold.
Condensation. Yeah, that's a much bigger issue than putting in a dryer. So really, this has probably been where the most work's happened. You've obviously done partial rewire, plumbing. You've been upgrading the bedrooms in terms of cosmetics. And the
so the bathroom, refitting all the bathrooms out, so stripping them out to put some nice bathrooms in. And then it's just, a lot of it is after the repairs, it's just the visual. How can we make it look nice? How can we make it visually attractive compared to everything else? So if we were to advertise the rooms and put a picture of the front of the property out, it's not going to attract much attention. If we've got a really nice picture of the rooms, professionally photographed, we know that will get plenty of attention. And you don't need to spend a huge amount of money in that little bit of detail. It's a bit of foresight and just thinking, how can I make it nicer and different to anything else?
It makes sense. I think go the extra mile, and whether you get more rent or more in terms of valuation, it's important, right?
Yeah, a tub of magnolia is not going to be that different from a tub of green paint.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'd like to cover whilst we're here, because anyone watching they'll always slaughter me in the comments if I don't ask. What are the figures? So if you don't mind sharing, like purchase price, the refurb numbers, and potential end value.
Yes. Okay. So we bought this one at 250,000.
Yep.
We will spend a total spend about 50,000 is our budget on it. We might go over slightly a little bit, but even up to 60 is probably okay with it. And that includes the stamp duty, the legals of buying everything. So the actual renovation, the works on the property might be about 35-ish grand. But we are running this one on a tight budget. We do employ a lot of our staff as well. So some of the jobs are passed out, like the electrical and the plumbing, but a lot of the other stuff might be done in-house. So it'll cost us less than passing the jobs out. And that's why we can do it on a tighter budget.
Effective, yeah. So
we'll be probably just over 300 grand all in. We would probably look to sell in the region of about 380 to 400. Once the property's finished and it's looking great, we know we can get some very good rents on this. As I said, we know the area very well. We have lots of other property in the area. And once we've got those rents, we've got the property running for 2 or 3 months, we've demonstrated actually this is regular rent rather than just a potluck, then you can justify those kind of figures.
Pops is looking down, I feel him every time the sun shine. Back to being unsigned, I only got my bloodline. With me going forward, smoking cookie till we... Heard you taking shots, we pulled up on them, they was gun shy. 2 p.m. in Rome, we at the chapel eating sun-dried tomatoes and a plum wine. Life been like a movie, y'all don't know how long the run time.
Another question in terms of looking at it from the beginner's perspective, you know, like if I did my first HMO, if someone watching wants to do their first, what some of the traps that someone could potentially fall into and not be aware of with HMOs?
Yeah, when you look at finished products like this and you look at the numbers and it's just amazing and mind-blowing, you think one or two of those in my life would just be completely different. That's absolutely true. For many people that is the case. However, there's lots of little things to be mindful of, but we talk about some of the licensing and planning things that many people are unaware of. But there's also the financing aspect, because these really are BRR kind of on steroids, as we were talking about earlier on, because the objective is that you are completely lifting the value of a property from what it started with, because it's based on its income. How much income is it generating? So a commercial valuation. But then that means you need a commercial mortgage in order to be able to extract the money at the level that you want. And if you're starting out for the very first time, sometimes accessing those products is not easy. So you need a good broker on board before you even start to make sure they can access the products that you want before you even start. So you start on the right foot. And if you're using like bridging finance or something to the purchase, you could get trapped where you can't get the finance to come off the bridge, and ultimately it means you'll end up losing the property or selling the property. So that's probably a big mistake I see people making, not understanding how they're going to go full cycle.
Yeah, I can really believe that. And I don't know if you know, but do you know that if someone was starting out and they went straight into HMOs, can they get a commercial mortgage, or do they need some kind of experience?
I'm not 100% sure. I think because the market's constantly changing, lenders' appetite for lending certain type of products is constantly changing as well. So I would speak to a broker that has done lots of these, rather than a generic broker that says, "Oh, I could probably get that for you."
Yes.
So you want one that's doing this day in, day out and understands they can look at your circumstances and see what's possible. The other thing also I always say, when you're starting out, one of the things that you should consider doing is purchasing property as your home. If you don't own a property, buy the first one as your home, renovate that, get stuck in, and you'll improve that property, you'll uplift the value. And if you stay in there for a period of time, you'll probably, you could rent a room. You've got the rent a room scheme, which is saving on tax. But then if you sold that property, you'd walk away with the profit. Well, you've got no tax that you're paying because it's your home. You'll probably not pay any stamp duty to buy it in the first place as well. So, benefit from that experience at the beginning of just starting out. It's not that you're purchasing it to flip, but just go through the experience of buying a home, living in it, doing it up yourself.
Yeah, I guess tax efficient, you get your track records, experience is probably the biggest thing, isn't it? You can I think we can teach as much as we can possible through this, but there's an element of learn by doing.
Nothing beats the doing. The learning is in the doing.
Yeah, definitely. And just leading off of the finance thing, that did bring one question to mind for me, and that is about bricks and mortar valuation versus a commercial valuation. Again, as someone that's not really done HMOs or haven't done HMOs, a long time ago, that was something where I was like, what are they on about? What's the difference? And obviously for me particularly as well, I used to think, how can someone take a property that's 300,000, maybe the street end value is 350, how are they getting 400, 450? Obviously there's quite a big difference there. Would you mind giving the audience a little bit of a breakdown on the differences between the two?
Yeah, so if we think about this as a family house, if this was originally a family house, which would have been a 4-bedroom house, very similar to the one, say, next door. Well, if next door decide that they want to put 2 beds in the reception room downstairs, so they've got now 6 bedrooms, does that mean that the value now jumps by 100,000, which is sometimes the people struggle to get their head around? Well, the reality is no, it doesn't, because all you've done is just put beds in different rooms. So you have to change the property completely from what it is in order for a surveyor to think, actually, this property can now no longer be valued as the one next door, which is just a family house. This has been changed so much that it moves into a different category. What we're trying to achieve, the category we're trying to get it into, is one like commercial property, like for example, a shop. What's the value of a shop? The value of that shop is what's the rent the tenant is paying with a multiple, generally speaking. So let's say they're paying £10,000 a year. You'd say, well, okay, that's maybe £100,000 is the value of that particular shop. And that's what we try and do when we talk about commercial valuation on HMOs. We try and create a valuation based on the income it's generating. So here what we're trying to do is push up the rents as much as we can by providing a nice product so that it pushes the value up of the property. Now, one of the challenges in doing that in a non-Article 4 area is that the surveyor could come along and say, well, actually, it's not that different. You haven't done that much to it. So I disagree. I don't think you could move it into a different category and value it differently. We're still going to value it as what we term as bricks and mortar, which is the same as any other property similar to it.
Yeah.
So if you are putting all en-suites in, for example, how many family houses have en-suites in the living rooms? They don't.
Yeah.
You are fundamentally changing that property. You're putting 2 sinks in, 2 cookers. The layout and design of that house is now such it can only be a HMO. It can't really be a family house. So then you're increasing your chances of it moving into that category. The thing that we like to do is go a step further. Rather than just that, is take a 6-person HMO and then apply for planning to have a 7th person live in that house. And that's usually as a couple. So one of the rooms would have a couple in it.
Yeah.
So there's still only 6 bedrooms, but you've got 7 people now in the property. That then changes the planning classification. We talked about C3 earlier, family house, C4 HMO, into another category called sui generis,
Yes.
which is a class of its own. Then there you're pretty much in a safe space where now you've repositioned that property and massively increasing the chances to be able to get that kind of valuation, which will be based on the income.
That's brilliant. So obviously you've got to change the layout so that it is definitely, a HMO, it's undisputable, drive up the room rents, and then try and get that 7th person classification.
If you can get the 7th, that generally you're in a very, very safe position of being able to get the valuation you want.
Could they technically still come around and say no?
And you can't, because its planning classification is different. They might argue with the value.
Yeah.
They can't argue with its use.
Whereas if it was just 6 people.
Yeah, they could just say, well, it's just a family house with 6 beds in it.
Okay. No, I think that's really interesting, and that's hopefully cleared up a little bit. Bricks and mortar valuation is more what's it worth in the area, in the street, whereas commercial valuation is all about, what's it rent for, what's the multiplication of that.
Yes.
And quite often you can get a much larger end valuation then, can't you?
That's the intention, but in some areas that doesn't work. So for example, in London, it wouldn't make sense to do it that way. You might have a better value as a bricks and mortar because the values are much higher anyway.
Yeah.
So if you based it on income, it might be lower because the yields are much, much lower in London.
It's a multiplication versus the yield.
Yeah.
But no, I just want to end the video here. I want to say thank you very much to you, Saj. If anyone's watching, they want to get in touch or follow you, where can they do that?
Just Google me. Website's probably the best, sajhussain.com, or just Google me, find me on all social media platforms.
Brilliant. And I'll put links below as well. But once again, I want to say thank you. Really appreciate you having me around.
Thank you so much.